welcome everyone to our session today. This is part of the BCS Women's Taster Sessions, where I'm joined today by members of the WISE Young Professional Board, or ex-members of the Young Professional Board, but they've all spent some time on there. And as BCS Women, we're here to support women and non-binary people with their careers in any way that we can. And we thought it would be really good to actually hear from some of the younger members of the community. So I'm going to hand over to Beth now to explain a little bit more about WISE.
Hi everyone, so I'll just quickly introduce myself first. So I'm Beth Clark. I am a quality and DevOps specialist at Rosen, which essentially means I'm responsible for ensuring the software we produce is produced quickly, efficiently, but still very high quality. We make software to support oil and gas pipeline inspections. And I was on the WISE Young Professionals board for 3 years between 2020 and 2023, and vice chair for 2 of those years. And I left the board just under a month ago. So WISE, for those of you that might not know, is a not-for-profit organisation. It's a UK-wide national organisation that aims to improve gender parity and gender equality across all STEM sectors in the UK. So WISE works with a number of its member organisations, which all 4 of us on the board work for a WISE member organisation, or worked for in my case. And they aim to improve gender parity by running a series of workshops. So we have things like the 10 steps benchmarking exercise to compare your gender parity with other companies. They also run knowledge sharing events where you can network and learn from other people and what they're doing in diversity and inclusion. And they also run larger events like national scale conferences to aim to educate and empower people across the UK around gender diversity and inclusion. And then we're all on the Young Professionals Board, and the Young Professionals Board is a voluntary group of up to 12 young people, men, women, non-binary people, any gender is welcome. And we spend our time volunteering to run national projects that aim to inspire the next generation. So we're looking at students, we're looking at school children, we're looking at young professionals. So we do things like run an annual competition for young people, which closed at the end of last month for us, with prizes and lots of STEM-themed puzzles. We also run partnerships with a lot of publishing houses looking at children's books and writing those to help inspire the next generation. We run a large amount of social media campaigns to try and increase our reach and provide a platform to showcase visible role models. We also do a lot of research work. So we've been doing a piece of work around the retention of women in STEM, making sure that when they get into those science and engineering jobs, that they don't leave later on down the line. And we do lots of other important work as well. And it's a wonderful group to have been a part of for so many years.
Thanks, Beth. Katie, you're next on my vision.
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone, I'm Katie Caulfield. I'm currently a quality manager working in GSK. So essentially that's managing investigations for any issues that we might have in the production environment and making sure that the product quality isn't impacted. So yeah, that's me. I don't know if you need me to talk about my experience on YPB, or is it just a quick intro, Andrea?
Just a quick intro. I'm sure some of that will come out as we go forward. Thank you.
Sure.
Izzy, you're next.
Hi everyone, I'm Isabel Byrne-Avery and really delighted to be in this session with you all today. I work for Arup. Arup's a built environment engineering company, and I work within our digital services team, so focusing in on the technologies and digital layers that cities and places need to help people experience them in a good way, and also to help them transition to more sustainable practices. Specifically, my work focuses in that area on circular economy, and I joined the board in 2021 and stepped off just a couple of weeks ago with Beth, but really pleased to be representing as an alumni today.
Thank you. And Kirsty.
Hey everyone, I'm Kirsty Carotti. I'm a software developer with BMT and the vice chair of the WISE Young Professionals Board. In my day-to-day job, I help to design web applications that interface with large data sets.
Thank you very much. So a question to all 4 of you is, why did you join WISE? And maybe we'll start with you, Kirsty, as you're still on my screen. And what do you do with WISE on the young person professional board?
So I was first introduced to WISE in 2019 by a colleague of mine, and I soon realised that my values are kind of aligned with that of WISE and the WISE Young Professionals Board. So during my time at university, I was on a board called the Women in Technology. It was more of a committee, really, and my time there gave me a passion for women in STEM and promoting gender parity in STEM. And I really wanted to continue that work to help inspire the next generation of women in STEM. So the opportunity to join the WISE Young Professionals Board came up and I jumped at it, really. And on the WISE Young Professionals Board, previously I've worked on the competition that Beth mentioned that closed just a couple of weeks ago. So I worked on that. And I've also helped on the informational pieces around retention. And then currently I am working on getting our podcast up and running, which we hope to release very, very soon.
Okay, thank you. Katie.
Yeah, sure. It's kind of similar to Kirsty, really. So my mentor at the time was actually a board member on the YPB. So whilst we had that mentorship ongoing, I got to hear about all the great stuff that the YPB do and obviously how they support WISE. And when she left the board and the opportunity came up, it was something that I was really passionate about, because when I joined the board or initially applied, it was smack bang in the middle of COVID, which I'm sure we all remember. And I think during that time, seeing how we had to have such a diverse group of people come together to try and solve a problem, it really got me thinking about what that looks like for the future generation. And I think that aligns really well with WISE and what the YPB are trying to do in terms of introducing the next generation to STEM and getting as many diverse people as possible together to help problem solve. So for me, it was great to be able to join the board and work with like-minded individuals. And as well as that, the environment that I work in is quite male dominated. So it was really interesting for me to learn more about the different sort of networks and experiences of other board members and how that can sort of feed back into my own organisation and potentially improve sort of gender parity issues. So that was sort of quite two of the main sort of drivers for joining the board.
Thank you. Isabel.
Yeah, I think so growing up, I think my kind of surroundings had really placed the understanding of kind of gender equality and just equity in the way that we treat people quite at the forefront of my brain. So my mum and my godmum, I'm thinking about the work they do, where they work a lot with women in leadership and in business. And I think I was very fortunate that they were very frank and open in the way that they talked about the way that they were working with women and the stories that they heard through that in terms of the challenges, the opportunities, the joys, that kind of connecting with different people across industries kind of give to your personal and professional life. So I think when I then joined the workforce and kind of started to see and experience some of the stories that I'd heard in my childhood, I really wanted to find a way to like lend my energy, I guess, in creating a kind of more a shape of industry that I would be very happy to pass on to my daughter or son or whoever when I get there eventually. And I think I was also looking for a bit of a community, so people who share my passion and energy, and also I think frustration and anger sometimes, but in a kind of productive way to actually change things in our sectors and our organizations as well. So that kind of, I think, put the questions really in the front of my mind. And then like Kirsty, I think it was actually the same person who I didn't work with but met just through kind of networking. She was part of the board. She kind of spoke about the work she did, and I was like, that sounds incredibly cool, really lovely people doing great things. And also ARIP, you know, we've been a member for a while, and it's a really good opportunity to help our organizations work better together. So I was really excited, yeah, when the applications came through and all of those sort of things met that I could do with a great group of people.
Thank you. And Beth?
Yeah, so I think I've always been quite a keen volunteer. I've been involved with other volunteer groups like the Scouts for most, if not all, of my adult life. And it's just always been something I've loved doing. I like being involved in activities that have that bigger purpose that help make the world and society a bit of a better place. And when I started my first job 3 years ago, I just got an email from my company because they had been a long-term WISE member, and they just advertised this opportunity. And I thought, you know what, I'm actually looking for this next thing for me to do, this next way for me to help make the world a better place. And whilst I was at uni studying physics, it's quite a male dominated subject. And I'd taken on roles like an academic representative and had heard firsthand the problems that women in my cohort had been facing. And so I thought, okay, I actually know a bit about this, let's give it a go. And I'd actually only been in my first graduate job for 3 months when I applied to join the board. And so it was amazing to have so much support from my company. They encouraged me to apply. They weren't worried about the time it was going to take. They just knew that the bigger mission of it was really important, and it was something that I was very passionate about. So I just applied and hoped for the best, and it obviously worked out quite well.
Yeah, thank you. And moving on to our sort of next question is really about your current role, and I know it's changed a little bit, but to talk about your key stakeholders and your sort of wider teams, and to talk about how diverse they are, and also the importance being, as you're big into testing, to talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, sure. So as you said, my current role changed 2 months ago. So for the first 3 years of my postgraduate career, I was a software engineer, and I worked in the safety critical software space, which is essentially building and testing software systems that help keep people and the planet safe. So things like air traffic control systems, rail protection systems, and satellite communication systems. We developed a wide range of software, and it was a really exciting few years I spent at that company as a consultant. So changing projects quite often. I got a lot of variety and experience in a range of industries and learned a lot very quickly. I also was on an apprenticeship, so I did physics and had done a little bit of coding at university, not too much. So when I got my first job in the tech sector, I did an apprenticeship to kind of cement my computing skills a little bit more. So I did that with BCS for 1.5 years and finished that in 2021, and then stayed on full time as a software engineer. Now I've kind of niched myself a little bit. As Andrea said, I am a big fan of software testing and of quality, and I sit on the BCS Special Interest Group in Software Testing Committee because I like it so much. And during my first job, even though as a software engineer, the job can be quite general, you can be doing anything from creating requirements for a piece of software to actually doing the code developing, to testing it, to doing the maintenance and support work, to training the users on how to use your software. And it was quite varied, but I really enjoyed the testing side. I loved being able to kind of take bits of software apart, push them to their limits, see what was going to happen, almost in a mischievous sense, I guess. And so I decided I actually wanted to kind of specialize a little bit more in my career and do something that focused on that testing and quality element. So my current job at Rosen is a quality and DevOps specialist. So I am responsible for leading all of the quality practices globally for Rosen in our software team. So I'm looking at writing new processes, which are just documents and trainings and e-learnings that help bring my team up to speed with what is quality, what are the tools that we use to ensure quality, and how do you actually use them, because a lot of some tools are new to people, so we need to make sure our training's up to date. And then working in DevOps, so DevOps is short for development operations, and it's all about how behind the scenes, how do our teams actually write that code? Do they have the technology available? Do they have the right skills? Do they have access to the right resources? Is there any process that's really manual and takes a lot of time that actually we could automate and make quicker? So I'm kind of helping lead on those decisions and set that direction for the team, which is really exciting because it's a really varied role. It's not 100% programming, it's not 100% management. It's a really nice in-between mix of both. So I kind of spend half my day writing some scripts in various languages, a bit of Python, a bit of Bash scripting, but then I also spend a lot of my day in meetings with people, either training them or talking to them about how they're finding their work and things like that. And it's really interesting. In terms of diversity, so Rosen is a pipeline inspection company, as kind of what we're known for. So looking at oil and gas pipelines, we go and do inspections to check for defects and dents and cracks, see how bad they are, and then we have a lot of software that can help calculate risk associated with that pipeline in terms of, will there be an oil leak, for example. And that industry is very heavily male dominated. So in my current team of, I think 20 people-ish, I am the only woman. I'm also the only person under 30. I'm the only person without children. So I stick out in quite a lot of ways, but I think that's really been embraced in my new role. I think they were looking for a bit of a breath of fresh air and somebody to come and do something differently. And it's nice to be in an environment where differences are celebrated and people are very open and understanding. And, you know, I've not been there very long, only a couple of months, but people are already listening to me. They're asking me to lead on things. And it's really nice because you do sometimes get unlucky in tech careers and end up in an environment where differences are suppressed. And so it's nice to be working in a team where that's not the case. And I really love my job.
Thank you. And that's really good to hear that, you know, that even in a male dominated environment that your voice is being heard, because so often we hear about people whose voices don't get heard.
Absolutely, yeah. Male allies are so important in the tech industry and making sure that women feel not only supported, but they're actually thriving and empowered to kind of reach their full potential as well.
Yeah, so good on Rosen is what I say. Kirsty, would you like to tell us a little bit about your role in the diversity there?
Yeah,
or
so
not?
as I said, well, as I said, I'm a software developer at BMT. So I work for a very, very small subsector of the wider company. So BMT are a naval design / engineering firm. So they do a lot around ships and submarines, but I don't do much around that. So as I mentioned previously, I design and develop web applications that interface with large data sets. So we are a defense company, so quite a lot of the time our customers have a huge data set of a lot of important and quite valuable information that they need us to take and make it easy for them to use and read and get the information that they require from it. So I do a lot around SQL coding, getting and design and user experience and things like that. And in terms of diversity, I'd say we are taking steps in the right direction. So my team is extremely small as software developers specifically. So I think we've got under 20 and there are only 2 females, one of which who is on maternity leave. So I am the only female currently working in our department. And I would say I don't feel like I'm treated any differently to anyone else, which I think is a positive. I'm definitely part of the team. There's no prejudice around me being a different gender to anyone else. And I definitely feel included in projects. And as a wider company, there is a lot of strategies being put in place around looking into kind of gender pay gap. We've just looked at signing on for a returnership scheme, so getting people back into STEM and careers after they take a career break. So loads of interesting things in the pipeline.
Okay, thank you very much, Kirsty. Katie.
Yeah, sure. So my current role, as I sort of touched on at the start of the call, is as a quality manager. And as of this year, I have joined the trainee qualified person cohort. So for those that don't know what a qualified person is, so in my role as a quality manager, I handle a lot of day-to-day issues working in GSK. I'm part of the respiratory section of the business. So it's a production facing role. So any issues on the line, that's typically where I'd get involved as a quality manager, making assessments on the quality of the batch and making sure that it's top quality and safety and all of the good stuff before it goes to the patient. And then as a qualified person, sort of when I eventually get to that part of my career, that's when I will become legally responsible for that product. So I certify the material before it goes to the patient. So if I get something wrong, I'll be in a lot of bother. But yeah, in terms of diversity, GSK is a massive organisation, and I've worked in various different sites in my career so far. So I think this is my 4th site. And it's really interesting, particularly in the UK, which is where I've been based, but I've also had experience in parts of Europe. It's really interesting to see, even in one organisation, the difference in diversity. So the site that I'm currently based on, my direct team is operational quality. It's really diverse, which is excellent to work with. I've learned so much from everyone in my team. Again, sort of that diverse mindset that I was talking to you at the start. But as I said, it's a production facing role, and that's where the male dominated environment comes from. Typically production is, I would say, anywhere up to 80 or 90% male, which hasn't ever, it can be quite intimidating. I think as I've recently been through the graduate programme, having my first role coming into quite a male dominated environment is quite intimidating, because at university it was very diverse, and you're in sort of a similar age group. So then going from that to people that are 20, 30 years older and all male, and going into a meeting room can be quite intimidating. But I think I'm very fortunate in the level of support that I have in this role. And I think a lot of like Kirsty and Beth have been talking to the fact that it's not necessarily impacted their job. People are very understanding, welcoming for new people coming in. So it's great to be part of such a diverse workforce, and championing making it even more diverse through the YPB.
Thank you very much. Izzy, what about you?
Yeah, my role, I really enjoy my role. It's very varied. So I kind of have
And very modern, I would say. Well, yeah, we've talked about some more the traditional roles, but
yes,
and maybe
it's
some people.
so,
well, it's not. Is to just explain a little bit about what the circular economy is and things, because there may be people on this call who aren't familiar with it. So.
Yes, yeah, sure. So yeah, well, my role is twofold. It is digital master planning and then also circular economy. And the circular economy element, for those of you that don't know what circular economy is, it's a kind of systems tool to help us in the kind of redesign of our economy to be more sustainable. So it thinks around, instead of having a linear take, make, waste, you're thinking about what can you reuse, how can you eliminate waste in your original design of a product, and also how can you be regenerative by design. So really putting nature as a key stakeholder at the table when we are making decisions. And so for me, working for a built environment organization, that means, how are we having, we're designing for people and also for planet in everything we do. And we do that in our digital team, mainly looking at kind of geospatial analysis of sites for kind of nature gain when we're thinking about a site development. It might be around looking at the data coming from a building site. So in London, you've now got to do a circular economy statement, for example, if you're building a new building of a certain size, to look at what materials can be reused. And at the moment, a couple of weeks ago, I had the joy of going through a very clunky Excel sheet, which was not very digitally advanced at all, but looking at how we can make that understanding of the materials far more efficient through things like material passporting and the data ecosystem that then wraps around the edge of our built environment. And that kind of joins up to my digital master planning role, where I started out off in master planning. So find myself struggling sometimes when I'm talking as a digital expert, because I don't feel particularly digital, but looking at the key touch points as someone experiences a place as either a visitor or a member of the community or someone that works there or someone that's planning a city, and how digital can be leveraged to support them. So for example, with the material passporting, if I'm a developer and I'm trying to understand the process of demolishing one building, but actually can I retain those materials and feed them into another building the other side of town to support my mission in reaching net zero, is understanding that process and the experience that people go through in order to facilitate that in all scales. So it's a very varied role, and it's very people-centered, which I personally really enjoy. And another, I do those kind of like more technical pieces, but also work a lot in partnership management. So working with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation on circular economy. They're a very, very interesting NGO who span kind of globally as well. So really working through what some of these technical things really mean for people at work in the way that they're thinking about their projects.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And what did you actually study at university, and how did you get into this?
Yeah, good question. And if you haven't gathered by now, I am a generalist and I studied geography. So I studied a bit of everything. I started off actually studying a physical geography degree at UCL, which I was absolutely obsessed with kind of volcanoes and earthquakes and loved all of that. And I think just as I lived in London, absorbed more and more the kind of the geology of a city and what makes up our cities. So then graduated and left UCL, I want to say 2018, but I'm not sure if that's entirely correct, but a while ago. And my first job was actually in master planning and urban design. So I worked for a design practice. And my first project was looking at the spatial framework for Q8, which was just such large scale. My brain almost couldn't quite get there. So I then wanted something that I could be maybe a bit more creative with, that wasn't so kind of planning policy driven as well. And found this role at Arup in their digital master planning team. And just through kind of talking to people, being nosy, carrying on that probably geography mindset, began working on more climate and circular economy pieces and filtering that into my own design practice and working with kind of digital master planning projects. And I'm now kind of building that practice so it's a bit more integrated between what the place needs in terms of environmental and also digital transformation. So I loved geography, and it gave me a great confidence in asking silly questions, I think, which is what led me here. I think that's been the thread.
Yeah. Thank you. And one of the reasons for asking is that we want to emphasize that you don't have to have studied computing to have a digital career. So I think with that, I'm going to ask Beth to talk about what she studied as well, because that's also very different from what she's doing now.
Yeah, so I studied physics with astrophysics at university with the original goal of going to do a PhD and being a space scientist. That was why I went to uni, that was my mission. But about 3 months into my degree, I realised what that actually would involve and how it would involve writing a lot of research papers and a lot of essays. And that is not something I'm good at. I do not have a long enough attention span to write, 10,000 word essays in scientific journals. It's not for me. So I was originally on a master's programme, and 3 months into my degree, I dropped down to a bachelor's programme so that I could finish earlier and spend less time at university. And then just kind of coasted through my degree. I didn't really know what I was going to do, but I was having fun doing astrophysics. I've always really loved space, so I was just very happy and thought, it'll be like fourth year Beth's problem. I don't need to worry about it right now. And then your final year does creep up on you, and I still didn't know what to do. I had done a placement year, so I went to the University of Bath, and they're quite big for doing industrial placement years. So I did do a year working in audit at PwC, so a financial services company. And all that taught me was I didn't want to do financial services. I actually wanted to use some skills from my degree. So I got into my final year and had no plan of what I wanted to do. I had lots of friends who had already got, follow-on degrees lined up, jobs lined up. And I started to panic a little bit. So in my final year, I was picking some optional modules, and I decided actually was a bit overwhelmed with the whole job search and everything. So I wanted to pick a module that wasn't an exam, it was coursework instead, to take some of the pressure off. So I took computational astrophysics, which is actually where I learned to code for the first time. So I was 21, 22 years old when I first learned to code, which, given that we teach coding in primary school now, is quite late to the game. But I really enjoyed it. I got through the course with a lot of help from friends who had a lot more experience than me, and I thought actually programming is really fun. I can see how, you know, with a bit of effort over a course of a month, I was able to simulate how fluids behave on the edges of stars and do some quite complex scientific simulations, and thought, if this is what I could do in a month, imagine what I could do with 2 months, a year, 5 years. Like, there's so much power in programming, and this is what I really want to do. The issue I then had is that, kind of stereotypically within tech jobs like software development and software engineering jobs, you do need a background in some sort of computing, whether that's a computer science degree or a software engineering degree, or even a computer science A level. I didn't even do it at A level, so I had nothing to fall back on. And that made a lot of doors closed for me. A lot of companies just saw I didn't have programming on my CV, and so didn't even bother looking at me. And so that's why my apprenticeship that I did was so vital, because if that hadn't have been an option, if that apprenticeship didn't exist, I don't know if I'd even be working in the tech sector. I don't know if I would have just given up eventually after all the other rejections I received and would have found some other job to do. But that apprenticeship was kind of the lifeline for me to get into tech, and ended up being a great decision for me, because not only did I then get to work full time, and I'm a person who tends to learn by doing, so I really enjoyed being on the job. But then I also got to cement my knowledge a bit more and kind of build some confidence in my software development skills. And it set me up very well for the career I'm currently in.
Thank you. Katie, what about you and what you studied?
Yeah, so I know I'm not technically a tech person on the call. I do have a lot of interaction with tech though. So my background is
and that, yeah, I would just
sorry.
want to add, is really important, because we want people on the call to realise that there are a lot of supporting roles in tech that you can actually do, or STEM roles that you can do to support the digital economy. It's not just about doing programming. So I just wanted to emphasize that point. So
yeah, no, it's a really good point, because I think even in OQ we are a support function, so we will be handling issues that have happened with tech systems or anything digital. We're having to analyze data. There's a lot of sort of transferable skill sets in the role that I'm in, which it's not technically a tech role. I have just done a project that is delivering an electronic system to site, so it's been a whole learning curve for me. But yeah, back to your question, Andrea. So my background is chemistry, and I think looking back, is when I was growing up, I would never have guessed that I would have ended up doing a chemistry degree, but I was always very curious, very asking why all the time, and science seemed to fit quite well with that. So I did triple science at school, and from there chemistry seemed to be the one that stuck. Even though it wasn't the one that I did very well at A level, I still pushed myself and took it as a degree, and fortunately it seems to have paid off. But yeah, from doing a chemistry degree, I went into a very analytical role, so I was an analytical lead, and that was a lot of project management as well as lab testing and method development and all of that fun stuff. And then from there went straight into quality, and that's sort of where I've stuck from there. So yeah, I guess that's my journey and my background a little bit.
thank you very much. Kirsty, what was your career path, or your career into GSK?
So as opposed to everyone else, I actually took a very, very straightforward path, by the sounds of it, into STEM and tech itself. So I studied computer science at university, which is, as Beth was saying, the one that all the tech people seem to want. And I also studied at the University of Bath as well. And I've got to say that although I learned a lot during my degree, I won't say that the degree itself was the thing that sets me apart as a tech individual in industry. So a lot of the things I learned at my degree were transferable skills. So there was a lot in the kind of team projects that we did. So we did a lot of software development, yes. And a lot of that was team projects, but it wasn't the specific software development that we were really being judged on. Well, in my opinion anyway, it was actually how we worked as a team and how we got that output. And that's a skill that I use day to day in my job. So I work alongside a team of software developers. And yes, we develop software individually, but we also work as that team. And that, I think, is one of the core skills that people are looking for in tech at the moment. I will say there was a few things at university that definitely helped me a lot. So I learned 2 specific programming languages. And those aren't the programming languages I actually use in my day-to-day job nowadays, but I also learned how to use those skills and learn new languages and pick up languages quickly. So that was definitely something I learned at university that helps me in my day-to-day job. What I would say though is the most valuable thing that I got from university, which I think Beth mentioned as not being valuable to her, was my year in industry. So I completed my year in industry with the company I am at currently, and the knowledge I learned on that year in industry was just way beyond anything I could learn specifically at university. A university degree can't prepare you exactly for what it's like working in industry. So that placement year was just exceptional for my personal development and learning of tech. And I mean, even if you gain that you don't want to work for the company that you're working at, I would recommend getting as much hands-on experience as you possibly can, would be my kind of one recommendation.
Yeah, I would agree. Even though I didn't like my company I was at my placement year, it taught me a lot about what I wasn't looking for after university. So I'd rather have spent that year in that job that I didn't necessarily like, and rather than, you know, committing to a 2 or 3 year graduate scheme and potentially making a bigger mistake. So Kirsty's absolutely right. Do take an opportunity to get into industry as soon as you can. Even if it doesn't work out, you'll learn a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's also something that I would add is, you know, you learn a lot of team and collaboration skills when you're at university, but that's not for everyone. And I think nowadays, in particular, the apprenticeship schemes are really important way of getting that industry experience. So you can actually find a company that will put you through an apprenticeship scheme, and sometimes that will also give you a degree at the end. So you get the benefit of both worlds. You get paid as you're learning, as opposed to getting your degree and then having to find something and find a way of paying it back. So in the interest of time, I'm going to ask what would you say to someone who's starting a STEM career, Beth? And what tips would you give them?
Yeah, I mean, my one piece of advice that I do regularly give to people starting out is get a mentor. It is probably, I think, the first thing you should do even before you've set foot in your new office and met anybody, is get a mentor. A mentor can either be somebody within the company that you're in, if your company has a mentoring scheme, or it can be someone external. I have 2 mentors, both of whom are external to my job, and I think having them has boosted my own confidence. It's given me direction when I felt really lost. If you're having a really rough day at work, there's a lot of imposter syndrome in the tech industry because it is quite an intellectually challenging sector to work in, and there are days which are really frustrating, and it's nice to be able to go to your mentors and go like, I'm having a really rubbish day, I'm really feeling like maybe this isn't for me, and they're people who you can just be honest with, who will give you that little push to keep going, and somebody who has seen you at your best and your worst and can just encourage you. I have 2 mentors. So one of my mentors is a technical mentor. So she's been working in software testing for over 20 years. So she helps me develop my technical skills, look at, you know, specific things for my role. And then my other mentor is a CEO. So she's more of a business mentor. So she helps me develop like my leadership skills. She helps me when I want to apply for promotions. She helps me how I write business cases and kind of manage the people management side of my job. So if you have got a job that's got a bit of variety, there's no harm in having more than one mentor. Have as many as you need. Just make sure that you actually get value out of those relationships. I know a few people that have signed up for mentoring schemes, had a couple of meetings, and then it's not really worked and it's fizzled out, and that might be because people need to prepare, the mentors and the mentees need to prepare. So it's good to make sure you go with questions for your mentor and maybe prepare in advance. They can put some information together for you, because when you make the most out of those relationships, it opens so many doors for you, because it grows your network, it helps you develop your skills and your self-confidence. And for me personally, it's been life-changing for my career to have mentors, so I'd highly recommend that to everyone.
Thank you. Kirsty.
Yeah, so my one big tip is never stop learning. So it kind of stems from Beth and her mentoring and people learning from others. But you, sadly, when you finish your A levels, GCSEs, apprenticeship, uni, whatever way you want to get in, you think, oh, I'm done. I don't have to learn, and I don't have to learn anything new. I'm all done. Sadly, that's not the case. No one is perfect. No one knows everything. So I think never feel like you don't know enough, because you do know enough. You just need to learn from others and their opinions as well. Everyone's journey has been different. Everyone will know different things. People have gone to different universities, learned different courses. No one's going to know the exact same things as you, have the exact same skill set as you. You are unique in yourself, and so is everyone else. So I think learning from others, as like mentoring or things like that, is so, so important, which means you shouldn't be afraid to ask for help. So as I said, you don't definitely know everything, and there are others around there, and they are there to support you. At the end of the day, if I'm working in a team of technical individuals, our goal is to get the product to the user. That's the goal. Yes, I may feel bad if I have to ask for help, but I don't, as someone who's been asked for help, you don't actually think that they're letting you down. You're happy to help. You may feel like you're dragging the team down, but you are not. So please just ask for help if you feel like you need it. And yeah, don't be afraid to learn new things.
Thank you. Katie.
Yeah, I think definitely echoing on, I think, some of the points that Kirsty and Beth made. Network for me was key. I think, like Beth said, having those people that you can rely on that will support you through your journey is really important. And you know, there's different avenues you can go down with. I've got a sponsor and 2 different mentors, and they both, you know, all 3, sorry, I sort of utilize for different purposes. But I'd say the most important thing that I would have told myself at the start of my career would definitely be, you know, it sounds very cliche, but be yourself. I know when I first started my career, I was very tentative, quite reserved and shy, which the people I work with now would absolutely disagree with. But when I first started, I was on a very accelerated graduate program, and imposter syndrome was very prevalent for me, and you know, I doubted a lot of why I was there, and it sort of held me back initially in terms of being able to use my strengths to the best of my ability. But I think as I got more comfortable in my role and became more of myself, a lot of the qualities I have as a person is, you know, helped me keep going and building throughout my career. So 100% be yourself. You have, as Kirsty said, your own strengths and weaknesses, and they bring a lot to the team. And diversity is obviously key in terms of a lot of the roles we have in problem solving. And I think the last thing I would say is be comfortable being uncomfortable. Being in uncomfortable spots at the time, it's not pleasant, but they're the times that you really learn and grow and develop. And you're going to make mistakes. I've made plenty, but that's where you learn the most. And yeah, it's okay not to know everything.
I agree. Izzy.
Yeah, I'm just, I would echo everything that everyone said, but I was just reflecting on my own journey. And I think the key bit that actually got me from study or from not being in the work that I wanted to be was actually just looking at the companies that were doing work that I felt passionate about, even if it wasn't directly something that I knew about, and just reaching out for coffee and networking through LinkedIn as that first step to actually growing the people that maybe one day become your mentor, but also can help you actually understand what it's really like in that industry or that company. And I think, you know, I did part of that when I was at university, so I could leverage the activities that I was doing while I was there, but also through kind of like, you know, parents, friends, using LinkedIn, going to events if they're on with like organizations. For me, it was kind of things like from the New London Architecture group, where they put on really interesting talks, so I could actually hear who was talking in the language that resonated with me, so that I could then start asking the questions that would help me work out what I actually wanted to do. So I think that's my main piece of advice, is be brave at sending that message to someone you don't know, saying, can I have a coffee to hear about your job, please? It sounds really interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's also about not being afraid to ask, and definitely it's all about growing your network.
Yeah,
whether it's through LinkedIn or just the other part is also having your own board, what I call my own board of directors. So there's a handful of people that I call upon who generally are outside of my direct line of work at the moment, who are made up of mentors, friends and family that I can actually go to bounce ideas off. It's really important to have those, to get that advice or have a sounding board, but equally important is the opportunity to be able to let off some steam.
yeah.
and frustrations.
I get that.
Because we all get those. So yeah, it's not unusual.
Yeah,
Uh,
I
and
absolutely resonate with that.
yeah, and so you know, I agree about the feeling uncomfortable with the uncomfortable is yeah, or comfortable with the uncomfortable, should I say. You always feel there's always going to be, but I think that's a good sign, because it means that you're learning and growing at that during those phases where you in that going through that.
If I can just really quickly add, sorry, just one thing that I meant to say is, in that Wise have got a really good tool called My Skills, My Life, which is aimed at younger people, but can connect you to people who are in jobs already. So that's a really good one, a practical that someone can go and look up, that gives you that connection, but a bit earlier on in your career.
That's really useful tip, so thank you. And thanks, Beth, for popping it in the chat. The other tip is, there are lots of people who aren't extroverts. I'm naturally an introvert, but I've learnt to master that and have to be a little more extrovert to be able to get on and progress. But if you are in a networking situation and you feel uncomfortable, look around the room, and there's what I call the wallflowers. There's the people who also are likely to be introverts, and you can just turn to one of those and start having a one-on-one conversation, and that's generally a lot easier to start to build your networks that way. So would thoroughly recommend that. And I've noticed there's, we've got some people who've in the chat talking about their careers as starting off in the music industry and now ending up in tech or in supporting roles in tech. So yeah, I think it is a diverse career, but it's also attracts people from diverse backgrounds, and I think that's what I like about it myself. So my background is that I studied biochemistry. I've since studied psychology, and I didn't plan a career in tech at all. I was given the opportunity to be a programmer, because they saw that I had analytical skills, and that's how I started my career, and have done things from development to program management to running large delivery teams to now being a consultant doing business change, so organizational business change. So it's a very varied career that you with lots of different things that you can do. And I did pop in chat GPT earlier to see what the roles of the future are, because I noticed someone was saying about digital security and cybersecurity. That's definitely one of the roles of the future that's going to be around for a while, as is AI, as is blockchain, and all sorts of other things. But as Katie and I mentioned earlier, that yeah, there's still a lot out there in terms of supporting roles that we also need to cover. I think one of the things that people said, are we just talking about entries for young people? No, these, you can do degrees, you can do apprenticeships. I did my data science apprenticeship in my late 40s, so anyone can join an apprenticeship. And one of our BCS Women committee members, she is what I call a serial boot camp person. So there are lots of boot camps out there. You probably need to do your research on which ones they are, but there's lots of them out there. We're planning to pull a list together that will introduce you either to data science or to software engineering. And we're definitely encouraging returners and the over 50s to do things like that, because we need to upskill. And whilst the roles that are around today may not be around in 10 years' time, we should be looking to upskill everyone around, because it doesn't mean that you have to go into tech. There's lots of things like product managers that you've got an understanding of finance or whatever, then it really does help that you can get those skills across there.
Yeah, just to add on to that, when I was doing my apprenticeship, there were a few members of my cohort who were at least in their 40s. They'd had a 20-year career in a completely different industry and had decided they wanted to move into tech. And in the apprenticeship cohort at my old company that started last year, we had more over 40s, so it was quite common to see people of all sorts of ages and stages. Apprenticeships are not just for school leavers. People can do them straight out of college or sixth form. They can do them after university like I did. You can do them at any point in your career. And yeah, Andrea briefly touched on returners schemes, and returnships are a big thing. So at the WISE conference that was last month, the whole theme was around retention of women in STEM, and the big theme that came out of that was the increased in amount of returners schemes that are there. So if you're somebody who's had a career break for any reason, whether that's been for medical reasons or for childcare or really anything, if you just chose to take a
any
career
form
break,
of caring,
yeah, exactly, any form of caring, and you're looking to get back into an industry or maybe try tech or STEM for the first time, you can look at a returners scheme. They're a bit more structured than just re-entering the workforce. You get dedicated mentoring and tutoring and support, so you're not just thrown in at the deep end. And there's lots of resources available. I'll pop some links in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. Getting into cybersecurity, a lot of companies want people with formal qualifications if you're looking at cybersecurity. So I think I would suggest that you can reach out to the BCS cybersecurity specialist interest group, and they will give you a lot of information on what you need to do. It's not my area of speciality, Shola, so I don't want to say this is what you need to do because I know that it changes, and there are a lot of it's not just university qualifications that you need to get in there, but you can. Well, I'll try and find something to post in the chat.
As someone, sorry, I was going to say, as
Go.
someone who works with quite a few cybersecurity consultants and also went to university with quite a few people that have now moved into cybersecurity, I would say just reach out to some people. I myself don't know how to get into that industry, but there's a lot of different ways, and just find someone on LinkedIn, see their job description, and reach out. If they don't reply, they don't reply, but you yourself have made the effort to try and reach out to someone to get a bit more information or knowledge.
Yeah. We've got 5 minutes left, so just scanning quickly whether there are any other questions that people had. Sarah, thank you. The GCHQ and MOD are likely to have more information on their website. So thank you for that, Sarah. As we don't have any more questions in the chat, I'm going to ask Beth one more question. So Beth, you've recently been awarded Rising Star Award at Every Woman. And first of all, congratulations. But
Thank you.
but secondly, how did that come about? And it's really important that people get recognised for what they do. And I know we've talked about it before about how do we help other people get recognised, and I think this is because we need the role models out there. So.
Absolutely. I think awards can be a daunting concept for lots of people, particularly, I mean, firstly, there are so many available and it's hard to know which ones are actually sort of worth your time, particularly if it's quite a long application form. It can be really difficult to know what to write. And I know that at least when I started my career, and I know many other women feel the same, it's very difficult to sing your own praises. It's difficult to, know what to say, how to write it. And a lot of people can feel uncomfortable in writing about themselves and what they're good at when you're trying to do an awards application. So a first piece of advice is, where possible, don't write your own application, get someone else to write it for you. And it ties into my own bit of advice around getting a mentor. So most of my award applications have been written by mentors or colleagues who have, either decided to recognise me on their own, or if I've said, hi, I think I might be a good fit for this award, would you be okay to support me? And they've happily helped me write something for that. And that was what the case was with Every Woman, is that my old employer looked out for women who they could nominate for these awards because they'd been involved with them for a number of years. And so I had somebody supporting me with my application. It's not something I did on my own. And I think a lot of women feel like, I need to go and do this on my own and be a trailblazer, but absolutely not. Pull on whoever you've got in your networks. And if you don't have someone at your work that can support you, see who else you might be able to find. I know previous award winners are always normally quite happy to talk to people who are writing applications, because we want to support people in showcasing what they're brilliant at. And yeah, I think it's important to have self-confidence. If somebody approaches you saying, I think you'd be a great fit for that award, believe them. They're probably not lying to you. It might feel a bit strange, like, oh, I'm definitely not good enough for this award, like I've seen other people that have applied for it, but you probably are good enough. A lot of people are much better than they think they are. So I think just go for it, because there's so much benefit to going for awards, and it can be a lot of effort and it can be scary and you can get rejected. I've been rejected from many awards before, but that obviously doesn't get as much press as when you are successful. So remember that behind the scenes, anyone who's won any award has probably been rejected from about 10 as well. So just keep going, and the benefits you get are amazing. You get so many opportunities to meet more incredible people who are all doing brilliant work. You get opportunities to go and inspire the next generation. So you get to go talk at events and at conferences, and you can do press interviews. And it's also just great for your own self-esteem to be recognised. I think it gives you a bit of a confidence boost. And you can, help other people see how brilliant they are as well. So do have a look out for any awards. Every Woman happens every year. I've got my little trophy in the back there. So do apply for any awards like that, and there's other national ones available. But yeah, it's well worth doing if you can overcome that first little bit of dauntingness, if you will.
Yeah, and I think there's, Every Woman starts at school children, so all the way up. So there's no reason for you not to look to see how you can get yourself put forward for an award.
Exactly, yeah. The youngest award categories for 11 to 18-year-old girls, and then there's no upper age limit on the awards, so it really is for everybody.
Yeah. So we're at time. It's flown by this last hour, but I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all of you for participating today. It's been great to getting to know you a little bit more, and also to share the experiences. and I hope that all of you who've joined us today have found it useful, and we look forward to seeing you again. And please, we'll be putting this up on YouTube in the coming week or 2 weeks, should I say, and then we'll share it, but please share it with any children, parents, teachers that you think might actually benefit by listening to this conversation this afternoon. But with that, I'd like to say thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.